She was just a maid. He was the governor's son. One forbidden night changed everything. But she vanished without a word. 5 years later, their daughter sings their song at a festival, and the truth explodes before a stunned crowd. What happens when love is buried under silence, class, and heartbreak, but fate refuses to let go? Will he fight for the family he never knew he had? And will she finally believe she deserves more than just memories? Where are you tuning in from today? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Lila Thompson wiped her palms on her apron, her heart fluttering with nerves as she stepped out of the staff entrance of the Carter estate. The evening air was thick with spring warmth and quiet tension. She wasn't supposed to be nervous. This wasn't her first cleaning assignment. But tonight was different. Tonight, she was heading to the penthouse. His penthouse. Rena's gone home to visit her mother, Auntie Ruth had said earlier that day, tucking a stray gray hair behind her ear. So you're filling in. Take Charles's car. He knows the way. Lila had nodded without question, though her stomach nodded. Everyone in the estate knew about Damien Carter, the heir to the Carter fortune, the only son of the governor, and the kind of man whose presence could bend the mood of a room with a glance. He barely visited the main house, but when he did, maids moved faster, cooks stirred quieter, and no one dared breathe the wrong way. As the elevator climbed to the top floor, Lila stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her loose braid, her worn sneakers, her plain uniform, she looked like exactly what she was, invisible help. And that's how she wanted it. The penthouse was quiet when she stepped in. Clean already, but she set to work like she'd been trained, dusting, wiping, straightening magazines that didn't look touched. She hummed softly to herself, a song her mother used to sing before she passed. As the sun dipped below the skyline, she stretched her sore back and let out a sigh. That's when she heard the lock click. Her breath caught. She turned, and there he was, Damien Carter. Even out of focus, he radiated something untouchable. Dressed in a dark suit with the collar slightly open, his tie in one hand, his brow furrowed like he hadn't expected to see anyone. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, landed on her. "You're new," he said, voice low, a hint of whiskey clinging to his words. "No, sir," she replied quickly. "Just filling in for Rena." He stepped inside, letting the door shut behind him. The air shifted. Lila swallowed, trying to maintain her composure, but she could feel the weight of his gaze, how it lingered too long. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "You're humming," he noted, walking toward the kitchen. "That song. I haven't heard it in a long time." Lila blinked. "Just something from home." He nodded slowly, then poured himself a drink, leaning against the counter. The silence between them was dense but not uncomfortable. She tried to return to packing her supplies, eager to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Come here." It wasn't a question. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed no, but her legs moved anyway. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way he said it, like she already belonged there. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You look like someone I used to dream about," he said, too close, too honest. "Sir, I should go." But before she could turn, his lips pressed to hers, slow, deliberate, electrifying. She froze, then melted. And when his hands found her waist, tugging her closer, her breath hitched, her mind spiraled, and in that moment, her world shrank to the curve of his mouth, the heat of his touch. When they made it to the bedroom, she whispered, I'm still. He didn't falter, he simply nodded and said, "Then I'll be gentle." And he was. Gentle, patient, intoxicating. Afterward, wrapped in silence, she stared at the ceiling, Damien already asleep beside her. The city blinked outside the window. The reality of what she had done sank in, slow and heavy. She was a maid. He was a Carter. And nothing about this night was supposed to happen. 5 years later, the coastal town of Willow Creek was quiet in the early morning, bathed in soft golden light as seagulls cried overhead. Lila Thompson stood in the kitchen of her small rental home, flipping pancakes while Ava hummed in the living room. The melody floated through the air, sweet, familiar, almost haunting. That song again. It was the one she had sung to her babies when they were still in her arms. And now Ava, her daughter, was singing it on her own, unknowingly echoing the moment her life had changed forever. "Is it okay if I sing this for the festival, Mama?" Ava asked, poking her head around the corner, her eyes wide with curiosity. Lila paused. The spatula hovered in her hand. That song? Ava nodded. It's my favorite. You always get quiet when I sing it, though. Do you not like it? Lila forced a smile. No, honey, I love it. It just brings back memories, that's all. Ava twirled away, satisfied. Her twin brother Caleb hot on her heels as they raced out the front door to practice outside. Lila stared at the stove, the pancakes forgotten. The song had once been her lullaby of love, a tune from a night she both cherished and regretted, a song Damien had softly sung in her ear before everything had shifted, before she had disappeared from his world with a secret he never knew. She had told herself she did the right thing. He never came looking, after all. Maybe he never cared. Maybe he never remembered. But as the town's spring festival approached, anxiety crept in like rising tidewater. Lila had signed Ava up for the children's singing contest months ago, never imagining who the judges would be. When the town posted the list that week, her heart dropped. Guest of honor and head judge, Governor Damien Carter. Her hands trembled just reading the flyer. She had to sit down before her knees gave out. 5 years of silence, and now fate was dragging him straight to her doorstep, unknowingly. The day of the contest came faster than she wanted. Ava wore a soft white dress with hand-sewn lace. Lila had stayed up all night stitching. Caleb wore a tiny button-up and suspenders, beaming with pride as they waited in the crowd. Backstage, Lila crouched beside Ava, smoothing her hair with steady hands. You nervous? She asked gently. Ava nodded. A little. What if people don't like my voice? They will. Lila whispered, sing from your heart. That's what makes it real. Just then, an announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome our panel of judges. And now, joining us today, our honored guest, Governor Damien Carter. Lila's blood turned to ice. She turned toward the stage. Tall, composed, that same magnetic presence. His hair a little shorter, his suit crisp, his face more mature, but unmistakably him. As he stepped into the spotlight, applause roared around him. Lila felt her chest constrict. Caleb tugged on her sleeve. Mama, why are your eyes shiny? She blinked, quickly wiping them. Just proud, baby. Just proud. Ava was called next. She took the stage with nerves dancing in her smile. This song is for my mama and papa, she said boldly into the mic. Even if he doesn't know he's my papa yet. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lila's heart dropped into her stomach. The music started. The familiar melody filled the air, soft, emotional, true. Damien's head turned slowly, eyes scanning the audience. He froze. Lila met his gaze. Time collapsed. The past caught up. She clutched Caleb's hand, and Damien Carter remembered. Damien Carter stood frozen near the edge of the judge's table, his gaze locked on Lila, like a man seeing a ghost. The song ended, but he didn't clap. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The little girl, Ava, looked just like her. And that boy beside her in the crowd, he looked like him. Was it possible? The host called for a break, and Damien didn't hesitate. He stepped off the stage, weaving through the crowd, his eyes never leaving Lila. She turned, grabbing Caleb's hand as if preparing to leave, but he reached her before she could take a single step. Lila, he said, voice hoarse, stunned. Is it really you? She turned slowly, meeting his eyes, every fiber in her body trembling. Hello, Governor Carter, she replied quietly, steady despite the storm inside her. His jaw clenched. Don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm a stranger. You became one, she answered, soft but unyielding. Damien stared at the twins. Ava was smiling from the stage, waving to her brother, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding below. Caleb clung to Lila's arm, suspicious of the tall man now towering over his mother. I need to talk to you, Damien said, his voice lower. Please. Lila hesitated. Later. She meant it as a delay, but Damien clung to it like a promise. That night, he showed up at the small diner where Lila worked the evening shift. She didn't look surprised to see him, just tired. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked outside with him to the back alley, where the streetlight flickered dimly overhead. You had children, he said, the words barely audible. You had my children. Yes, she answered. And you never told me? You never asked. He flinched. I didn't know you disappeared. You didn't look. Her words cut deeper than he expected. Damien ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. Why did you leave? Lila crossed her arms. Because I was the maid, Damien. Because I was scared. Because your mother slapped me across the face and told me I'd never be more than a passing indulgence. She made it very clear your world had no place for someone like me. Damien's fists clenched. She said that to you? Lila nodded. I didn't leave because I hated you. I left because I loved you. And I refused to let my children grow up in a home where they weren't wanted. For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of a passing car. Damien looked away, jaw tight. Let me make it right, he said finally. It's too late for right, she whispered, but maybe not too late for truth. The next day, the town buzzed with gossip. A governor, showing up again and again at a local diner, at the school gates, walking through the farmer's market with a small boy on his shoulders. The mayor's wife called Lila a disgrace. A customer muttered something ugly under his breath, and by the end of the week, the diner manager let her go. I'm sorry, Lila, he said. I just don't want trouble. She packed her things that night, silent as Ava and Caleb played on the floor. Are we leaving again? Ava asked softly, like she'd seen it in her mother's eyes. Lila looked out the window at the dark horizon. No, she said at last. We're going back. Back where? Caleb asked. She turned to them, her voice calm but fierce, to the place where I stopped believing I mattered. And the next morning, with her children beside her and the past waiting ahead, Lila stepped into the Carter estate once more. The Carter estate hadn't changed much in 5 years. The same ivy crawled up its stone pillars, and the fountain still trickled softly in the courtyard. But to Lila, everything felt different, heavier. Ava and Caleb stood at her sides, holding her hands tightly as the gates swung open. She hadn't told them much, only that they were going to visit someone important, but her heart pounded like a warning bell with every step toward the front door. Inside, Auntie Ruth gasped as soon as she saw them. She rushed forward, wiping her hands on her apron and wrapping Lila in a tight hug. Oh, my sweet girl, she whispered, her eyes misting. Then she turned to the children. And these must be... They're mine, Lila said softly, and his. Before Auntie Ruth could say anything more, a clipped voice echoed down the hall. What is the meaning of this? Lila's breath caught. Victoria Carter. She rolled in with her polished cane tapping against the marble floor, eyes sharp, lips drawn into a tight line. Her once blonde-haired grayed, but the disdain in her gaze was as sharp as ever. You show up here after 5 years, uninvited, dragging this into our home? Lila stepped forward. I didn't come to cause trouble. I came to be honest. Honest? Victoria's voice rose. The help doesn't owe this house confessions. You were dismissed, quietly, generously. And now what? You bring 2 fatherless children and expect what? Sympathy? Ava shrank behind Lila, Caleb's jaw clenched. Lila's hands trembled, but her voice didn't waver. They have a father, one you kept in the dark. Enough. Victoria snapped, raising a hand. If you think this carried will work. She's not lying, came a calm voice from the stairs. Damien. He descended slowly, each step deliberate. They're my children. Victoria stared at him in disbelief. You did this to yourself? You claim them? I do, he said firmly. And I claim her too. His mother's face turned to stone. You're throwing your life away. Damien's voice was low, resolute. Maybe I'm finally living it. Lila turned to him, startled. It was the first time he'd spoken so plainly, so boldly in front of his mother. He took her hand gently. I asked you to give me time, he murmured, to make things right. I'm still trying. I lost my job at the diner, she said quietly. Damien's jaw tightened. I'll fix that. I don't want pity. I want to be respected. You will be, starting today. Later that evening, he invited Lila and the twins to stay at his private hotel suite to rest. The space was warm, understated, filled with gentle lighting and soft music. It was the first time Lila had seen Ava and Caleb laugh so freely since arriving in the city. After the kids fell asleep in the next room, Damien sat beside her on the balcony, the city lights glittering beneath them. I want to marry you, Lila. She nearly dropped her tea. What? I want to marry you, he repeated. Not because of the kids, not because of guilt, but because every second I spent without you felt like I was holding my breath, and I don't want to live like that anymore. Lila looked away. Damien? I don't know if I can. Because of my mother? Because of what I went through, she whispered. Because I'm still afraid you'll choose comfort over truth. He reached over and touched her hand. Then let me prove that I won't. The next week, Victoria Carter sent for a DNA test. Damien agreed. The results left no doubt. Ava and Caleb were his. Victoria didn't apologize, not yet. But something in her eyes shifted the first time Caleb fell asleep beside her on the couch during a rainy afternoon. Meanwhile, Lila sat in the garden with Auntie Ruth. "Do you still love him?" Ruth asked. Lila looked toward the house, where Ava and Damien were laughing through the glass. "I never stopped." Ruth smiled. "Then don't let fear stop you either." The lights inside the grand ballroom dimmed to a soft glow, and the air shimmered with anticipation. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting golden halos across the velvet-lined walls. Guests, dressed in their finest gowns and tailored suits, murmured among themselves, unaware that something far more personal than politics was about to unfold. Lila stood just beyond the curtain, heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. She wore a flowing navy blue dress, modest yet elegant, her hair pinned back with delicate silver clips. Ava and Caleb clung to each side of her, both dressed in matching outfits Damien had chosen himself. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered to him earlier that day. He had smiled and taken her hand. "I've never been more sure of anything." The host stepped onto the stage, announcing Governor Damien Carter's arrival with thunderous applause. As he took the mic, Lila watched from the shadows, her breath caught in her throat. Damien glanced around the room, his eyes pausing on familiar faces, donors, reporters, former critics. Then, with the calm of a man who had already made peace with the fallout, he began to speak. "Tonight was meant to be about leadership, about public service. But I'd like to take a moment to speak not as a governor, but as a man, a father, and someone who, for too long, lived a half-truth." The audience quieted. Forks stopped midair. Wine glasses hovered. "5 years ago," he continued, "I lost someone I loved. Not because she abandoned me, but because I wasn't brave enough to stand by her when it mattered most. Tonight, she's here. And so are the 2 children we brought into this world, my children, my family." A collective gasp swept the room. Lila stepped into the light, her hands gently guiding Ava and Caleb forward. For a moment the world felt silent. Then Damien opened his arms, and the twins rushed into them. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered, but Lila only saw his eyes. He walked to her, and in front of everyone, knelt. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said, pulling a velvet box from his pocket and opening it. "Lila Thompson, will you marry me?" She covered her mouth, eyes stinging. Ava and Caleb looked up at her, beaming. "Say yes, Mama," they chorused, giggling. She laughed through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." The applause was thunderous. Flashbulbs went off. But all Lila felt was peace. That night, they stayed in the hotel suite as a family. Damien wrapped his arms around her as they watched the twins sleep, their small hands resting on the plush comforter. "You look like you still don't believe this is real," he murmured into her hair. "Because it doesn't feel real," she replied. "It feels like a dream I was too scared to keep." "You don't have to be scared anymore," he said. "We're not hiding. We're not running. Not ever again." Their wedding was held a few months later on the cliffs overlooking the ocean in Big Sur. Auntie Ruth cried through the entire ceremony. Ava sang. Caleb handed over the rings with pride, and Victoria Carter, surprisingly, stood beside Damien, hand resting on Ava's shoulder, finally letting go of her pride. After the vows, they spent a week on a quiet beach together, where laughter echoed off the waves and every meal was shared without fear. One morning, as Lila watched the sunrise while the kids built sandcastles with their father, she whispered to the wind, "Thank you for bringing us full circle." Damien walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Do you still think this isn't real?" he asked. She turned to face him. "It's real," she said. "It's ours." And just like that, the love they once thought impossible became the life they would never trade. A life not born out of wealth or politics, but truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that survives everything, even silence. Life lesson from the story. This story reminds us that love, when it is genuine and selfless, has the power to survive even the longest silences, deepest wounds, and harshest circumstances. Lila and Damien's journey wasn't perfect. It was filled with heartbreak, fear, and the weight of societal judgment. But through it all, they learned that honesty, forgiveness, and courage are the foundations of any lasting relationship. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones we're most afraid to lose. That fear can lead to silence, to separation, to years spent apart. But the moment we choose to face our fears, to speak our truth, to fight for what we believe in. We begin to reclaim our story. Lila's strength reminds us that it's okay to walk away when we're not respected, but it's also brave to return when love calls us back. Damien's growth shows us that status and pride mean nothing without heart. And their children, Ava and Caleb, prove that even the smallest voices can bring about the biggest changes. In the end, the story teaches us that real love isn't just about grand gestures. It's about showing up, every day, in quiet moments and hard ones. It's about being present, choosing each other, and never giving up, even when the world tells you it's impossible. Now, I'd love to know, where are you watching or reading from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming and inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for being here with us. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in love.